AI is going to try to shape your brain.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. Um, I'll tell you another thing. I am currently getting more and more into the collective intelligence space. This is a
Yeah.
very nascent domain that includes stuff like swarm intelligence. But collective intelligence, if you want to contrast it with with AI, CI, collective intelligence is the way to do it.
Buy my novel, Escape from the Village, from major booksellers online. Go to escapevillage.com. Subscribe to my Substack. Go to fountainheadforum.substack.com. Thank you.
Welcome to the party, pal. This is Fountainhead Forum 191. This is the second time we've had Max Borders on. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence and how we think it could be applied for good or bad. Max uses AI a lot. Max is very much a man who likes to embrace all the new stuff as soon as it comes out. Right, Matt? Is that fair to say, Max?
I think that might be a little bit of an overstatement. I'm usually an enthusiast for it when it first comes out. And then I end up coming up toward the end of the line in terms of the adoption, simply because I'm not terribly techie. It has to be really simple to use. And of course, these AI chatbots are really simple to use. So that's been great. And in terms of learning to use them and adapting prompts, things like that, I've loved it.
Oh yeah, well, sometimes the people who create this stuff aren't nearly as good as putting out nice little manuals for you. They don't really enjoy doing that part of the work. They just want to do it and put it out there. I think but some tech you can just figure it out, but other tech it's not quite as easy to figure out. But yeah, so we've had it. When did you first start using artificial intelligence to increase or improve your workflow?
I guess. Well, I started using it in earnest probably around the same time everybody else did. I was registered for early betas of OpenAI's LLM.
Yeah.
And then at that time, for me, it was more of a novelty rather than being something that I used a lot for in my professional life to, increase productivity and get things analyzed and churned out in a timely fashion. But as I've trundled along, I've really come to use it in that way. And it's made a significant difference.
So when was that on the calendar?
Oh gosh, I couldn't tell you. Yeah. Year and a half ago.
Okay, year and a half ago. Yeah. Okay, so because I wasn't sure, when everybody else started using it. But that seems about right. A year and a half ago. So yes, you just started out. What did you first notice that what worked well and what didn't work well in your view?
Well, I think there had been problems with accuracy early on. That didn't work well. There were things that were suspicious immediately. And I think in the early versions of some of these, for example, I'm using the new Venice, which is a more decentralized open source outfit that Eric Voorhees is behind. I really want to give that a lot of support because these open source versions, we can talk about why people ought to prefer open source versions to these corporate versions. Suffice it to say, I noticed I asked it something about Eric Voorhees, which is one of the co-founders. And of course, Eric Voorhees has been instrumental in what I call the subversive innovation space. And that includes all things cryptocurrency. He was a very early OG, but extremely talented, articulate, philosophical moorings, moral substrate to him that I very much appreciate. And so he was he's one of the co-founders of Venice. He obviously thinks that such awesome power shouldn't be in the hands of sort of corporate overlords. And I'm coming around to that view. In fact, I've held that view for a while. And yet I asked the machine about who the founder was, or something about Eric Voorhees, and it made a mistake and ascribed to him something that wasn't true. I think it said something to the effect that he was a co-founder of Kraken. But Kraken is started by someone else. Kraken, the
Crypto exchange.
Crypto exchange, yeah. So these early ones I've found were full of error, and if you didn't know that in advance, it might lead you astray to publish or say something or assert something that is untrue. As those kinks get worked out, I think they're steady improvements. I also think that early on problems with it were immediately bias that had a particular political perspective, and I think that persists to a very great degree. And there are so many things I want to do that are critical of certain people in power, or that have that I want to use dark imagery somehow, and I really have to fight it to get what I want, or it doesn't allow me. It just says it's against its against its protocols, or rules. So these open source variations are more likely to give us what we want, and not be so biased in terms of telling us what they think we ought to have and what we ought not to have.
Yeah, I do wonder about the bias. I don't think I would ever. I'm confident enough in my own research abilities that I would never use AI for research. But if I wanted to do, I have used it to do artwork or something like that. It's and there's a lot of cool stuff out there too. One of the coolest things I found was when somebody did a Frank Sinatra singing Bohemian Rhapsody. Frank never recorded that, but I thought, well, this is really cool. And, it certainly sounds like Frank. And, what you do ask yourself, what would it sound like if Frank sang Bohemian Rhapsody? You can certainly.
Scaramouche.
Yeah. You could apply Frank to a lot of those, a lot of songs like that.
So, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that people are doing with it, and that novelty value. It's interesting how quickly people have come to accept it. Even my kid, I have a 17-year-old who's very talented in the multimedia space, where I continue to use imagery, for example, from the various LLMs, and I use 5 right now in various capacities. But my kid was using them for a while for his cover art, because he does electronic music and uploads it to Spotify, things like that. And after a while, he said, "Dad, nobody's using these image generators anymore in my age group." Whether or not that's true, I can't say. But there obviously is a thing where it's like people are already starting to identify and smell that kind of illustration, to the point that they're no longer impressed by it, and they think you become desensitized to the novelty of that image output, and the kids already are. So I find that really interesting. I still use it. I don't have time. I just need an image, and not everything is available on Unsplash. So
yeah. I've noticed that sometimes it doesn't always follow my orders, so to speak. Like, or for example, I wanted to make a picture of Joe watching TV, and it said it makes a picture of Joe watching TV. But then I asked for a modification, and then for whatever reason, it will turn the TV to where it's angled. I said, no, I want the TV to be straight on. So
oh yeah,
sometimes it loses instructions like that. And I've noticed also
it has a hard time keeping what you want.
Yeah.
And getting rid of what you don't want, and so the cycling through the variations can be frustrating.
Yeah, and I still haven't really noticed it. I've asked it to draw some famous people, and it said, this doesn't look like this person at all. I mean, if I can't recognize who that person is, that's the whole deal. But
well, they seem to be, if the people are alive, and even if they're dead, but certainly if they're alive, they won't allow their likeness, or they'll say we can create someone who looks similar to this and evokes this person, but doesn't look exactly like them.
Okay, so there's some kind of restrictions there that's doing that. So,
Mm-hmm.
so if I asked it for George Washington or Abraham Lincoln, it might work out okay.
You might do better, yeah.
But that's something else interesting too. I suppose regarding the restrictions. I mean, let's say I told AI, I said, okay, make me a film of John Wilkes Booth shooting Lincoln in Ford's Theater, and it might say, no, I'm not doing that. So.
Well, and as it moves into video creation, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens there, because there's gonna be this. It's already colliding with copyrights and other sort of legal fictions where it takes this sort of likenesses or logo marks or what have you, and manipulates them, adjusts the contexts. So there's going to be a lot of legal wrangling out of this convergence of the old copyright regime, where artists and photographers and so on create discrete objects, and this sort of amalgamation that happens through LLMs that give you something that is a probabilistic approximation of all of the instances that are available on the internet. Those are two very different approaches, but the way we perceive that is that's Mickey Mouse, right? And so can you use the Mickey Mouse likeness, and in what contexts? There are still contexts of satire and other fair use that are very much walking the line, but I'm thinking that with these distributed open source LLMs and other style artificial intelligence, you're going to start to see the purported copyright holders coming after the individuals who are using them.
Yeah. What's LLM?
LLM means large language model. Okay. And in terms of going deeper in terms of a definition, my basic understanding of large language models as opposed to other types of artificial intelligence, like machine learning algorithms, I think might be different. Now, I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence on the certainly not on the techie side. I have long wanted to explore this socio-cultural implications of artificial intelligence. So I know enough, just enough to get me in trouble and probably be disastrously wrong. But what I understand about LLMs, they work primarily through determining probabilities. So if you have a set of instances out there and you ask it a question, it will amalgamate all of the answers in terms of a sort of a probabilistic blur and privilege what it thinks is likely to be the most valuable or gratifying answer. And it does a very good job of that. And that's, there are other things. And I assume also that the image creation aspect works the same way, where you don't have words and using Zipf's law or instances within a sentence, but rather you have, these sort of 100,000 instances of an image, and those get sort of probabilistically amalgamated is the only term I can come up with there, but a blurring together of those instantiations to make a sort of gestalt that is like a probabilistic gestalt that is delivered to you as a response. That is how I understand it working. And that's probably a piss poor definition for someone who actually works on this stuff, but I hope you'll permit me to go with it today.
Yeah, that's yeah. So I also think open source is very important. Something we definitely so we know exactly what's happening with this and what's in the programming because you can at least look and see how it's programmed. I mean, for the lay people out there who may not understand what we mean when we say open source software, basically it's the analogy I like to use is you can whether or not you can open the hood of your car. I mean, if you're closed source software is like you would be your car's broken and you have to send your car back to Ford or Chevrolet and they'll fix it for you and you can't open the hood. But if you have open source software, you're basically allowed to open the hood and see the code and even make your own little modifications to it. So
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. And so the other thing about open source software is if you imagine using your car metaphor, imagine
Yeah.
we have a car that is sort of like the ship of Theseus, okay? Because it's a digital thing. You can have components, aspects and components be replaced in real time. In one instance, let's call it proprietary, you're going to have 15 guys at Sony or Microsoft or what have you um, fiddling with and designing aspects of the software, right? They're hired, they have signed NDAs, it's proprietary, it's trade secrets, it's probably copyright on certain aspects of it or patents. And then on the other, you have on the open source side of things, you don't have anyone who controls it or owns it. You have a set of gatekeepers who determine what relative contributions, but that is carried out through a transparent process. And so these teams of people around the world can work on software that's open source, can not only look at the code to see how it's biased, how it looks, what it does, and any participant can contribute to the code base. Any given person contribute to the code base so long as it's functional and in keeping with the mission and so on. And they have governance mechanisms to see what gets restricted and what doesn't. And I'm not super tuned into that, but it is at least that level of transparency and the fact that it's unowned by anyone. It's a kind of commons.
Yeah.
Right. So a digital commons is a perfectly good and interesting construction. It's not as good to have property commons because they can be overexploited and so on, but because the digital is infinitely replicatable, you don't have to worry about overexploitations of these commons. Whereas in a proprietary situation, you can't change it. You can stomp your feet, you can shake your fists, but otherwise the person who owns the technology calls the shots. So these are two very different models about how things roll out. So you might ask, why is someone like you who likes private property, who likes entrepreneurship, Max, why would you express a preference for the open source distributed commons? And the answer to that is first, transparency. We know that these corporations have been in collusion with government proxies, government authorities on many things for a long time. So if they don't like your opinion on things, whether that's on Facebook or what have you, or Twitter in the pre Elon regime, or if even Elon doesn't like your opinion, you may have your message suppressed or censored. Whereas in an open source platform, that may also that's significantly less possible. And certainly the technology itself, particularly if it's cryptographically protected or part of a distributed system that is censorship resistant, for example, like Nostr,
Yes.
that is open source, an open source social media software that you can't shut down, or at least it's very difficult to shut down and to censor people. So that's an interesting turn, and I think we're going to see more and more of that. So there are a couple of things there. It's the censorship resistance, but also who is in control and how transparent it is. When you have these powerful AIs, and they're going to get more and more powerful in time, we don't know if they're going to use an S curve or if they're going to continue on an exponential trajectory. Whatever the case there, it's going to be on an exponential turn for a while, even if it's an S curve. And that means that the most powerful people in the world are going to get used to these technologies first. Why on earth would we want them to have more power than they already have relative to you and me?
Yeah, for people who may not know, Nostr is Nostr. It's a social media platform that's used by a lot of Bitcoiners. It's blockchain. I should have somebody on here sometime to talk just about Nostr. I'm not on it myself because I haven't figured out exactly. I probably have to see it myself before I get on it. But yeah, I've certainly know it's very popular with Bitcoiners. And the other thing about and what I've noticed about open source software too is, for example, Red Hat learned long ago, well, we'll give the software away, but we'll sell you a support contract. And that's ultimately what a lot of companies want anyways. They get the software, but then they buy support contracts so Red Hat will help them solve a problem. But also, if Red Hat puts out their new version of their server software and 3 weeks later somebody says, hey, I noticed this problem, and then I went, and since it was open source, I went in and fixed it, and then go back to Red Hat and say, oh, thank you. So you got people fixing your software for you, and they may not, and they may just, they may have just had an immediate need that they had to fix it, but you've got people working programming for you, at least bug fixing for you for free, and because
I'd like to make an appeal to your listeners, if I may, on this point. I'm working right now with an early team that has a very, very interesting technology, and its implications are pretty profound. Let's just say that. And these folks want this to be open source for that very reason, not proprietary. I would be curious to learn from your smart listeners what a really good model is along the lines of Red Hat, where the early stage folks, early stage team can get this out there and get it into an open source ecosystem, but at the same time ensure that the very early overcoming the gravity of liftoff gets remunerated for a team, so that there's a transition model. It may be that that's not true. It may be that that's contradictory and against the very ethos of open source. But my hope is that there is a transition path where and a business model, much in the same manner as Red Hat, where they could have ongoing expertise for helping companies apply it, and yet the technological substrate or protocols are open source.
That's a tough question. I'm not sure how exactly I would go about doing that. It sounds interesting. There's a lot of people doing interesting things. Maybe you just need to find somebody to get behind you who's well known. Or
well, there's so many. There were a lot of models, and one of which was a token sale. Yeah. But because of the regulations on securities versus utility tokens that happened back in the teens, it's become increasingly difficult to develop a token, and of course, a lot of those turned out to be big duds, and people got ripped off or felt ripped off. So that whole model is sort of, it's not collapsed, but it's just it's out of favor.
Well, it doesn't even have to be tokenized. I mean, you can be like Elizabeth Holmes with Theranos and things like that. It's just it's really interesting how some of these people can just convince investors that they've got a winner, and it ends up being a dud. I mean, that's the nature of it's just like when Edison said, I haven't failed 1,000 times. I just found all these ways that didn't work. It's most of these things do fail. It's overwhelmingly so.
Well,
think you've,
I mean, I think the technology is currently that this group I'm talking about is working on is currently in really healthy prototype phase where it's demonstrating it can work. Scaling it is going to be interesting, but I'm really hopeful. I'm just worried that more powerful corporations are going to get a hold of it, much in the manner of Microsoft got a hold of OpenAI. So that's of concern to me.
yeah, there's a lot of ways things can be. I mean, I'm somewhat disillusioned with what's happened with Bitcoin right now. I mean, with that, it was initially supposed to be a, just peer to peer cash, and now it's just become a speculative asset and other things like that. So there's certainly a, because it seems like if once you have something like this, once somebody who has a lot of money gets involved, they can kind of control where it goes or how it develops. Simply because they have a lot of money, they can bring in people and steer it in the direction they want to go into.
Yeah, I mean that depends on. That's an interesting conversation. I don't want to get too far away from AI, which is the subject at hand. On that, I will say, I like to remind everyone involved that the cryptocurrency space is a thriving ecosystem. And that means there are different aspects to different technologies, not only layers within technologies. So you have Lightning Network, layer 2 technology on top of Bitcoin. And arguably, that is a secure and a cache-like system. There, again, some people don't like it. Some people like the larger blocks. And now we therefore have Bitcoin Cash. And there was the BSV blockchain, which people seem to be abandoning, but its stalwarts are very, very, they're zealous. So when you have a churning ecosystem like this and people want different properties out of things, the people who want digital gold are going to like Bitcoin's properties, as long as that there is this this sense of security, particularly with sovereign wealth funds and things like that. The more there is this, not just hodl mentality, but people consider it a better asset to hold than the dollar. There's going to be a psychological change. But you're absolutely right. You can track Bitcoin's price with the NASDAQ right now almost directly. If you put the charts over each other, they track with each other very similarly. And I find this extremely unfortunate. But more and more you're going to have. I just think it's ridiculous. I understand that there's a tax benefit to doing so, but I think it's ridiculous that people want to use ETFs for Bitcoin. Just buy Bitcoin, for goodness sake. And if you want peer-to-peer cash, try some of these others. There's Dash, there's Monero, which is anonymous. There's Bitcoin Cash, of course. There's Litecoin, and there are going to be some others that have all these properties and more, like higher throughput and transaction speeds and things like that people are still a little unhappy about because of the scaling issues, the scaling and throughput trade-off and security trade-off. That being said, we're not here to talk about crypto. We're here to talk about AI. So I want to be respectful about that.
Yeah. Well, that's one thing now too, apparently, have AI bots that actually will speculate with crypto. You've got people using AI to speculate in assets. I suppose they're applying it to stocks as well, right?
They are. And I think if I were a little more savvy on how to set up these prompts and figure out how to plug that into these auto purchases, things like that, I'd consider doing that. but I'm not so savvy, and I don't want to set something to run and go to, automatically and go to sleep and wake up the next day and I've lost $30,000 or something.
Yes. I think, I think one thing that maybe makes AI successful in something like this is it completely takes emotions out of the equation.
Yeah. That can be good and that can be not so good.
Yeah. And what I often tell people about crypto,
people underestimate, and to be on a podcast called the Fountainhead Forum, might feel as if I'm throwing a tomato at Ayn Rand or something. But people woefully underestimate the power of emotion and instinct in decision making.
I know what you're saying. I mean, I do wonder if there are also ways that we can communicate that go beyond the systems of perceptions that we're aware of. It's the same way that the people in the rainforest say that the plants will talk to them, but they communicate to them, not through any means that we know. Imagine what happened if you went to another planet and there was no sound and none of the animals on that planet had any sense of hearing. Now imagine if you went to another planet and every life form on that had another form of sensory that we're totally unaware of.
Right. It's just a different modality.
Yeah, and there does seem to be some evidence that plants are aware of things, whether how you talk to them or things like that. It's not something we can necessarily measure with the instrumentation that we have, though. But yeah, AI.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how well AI does with that as it moves forward too.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if AI does something like that. I mean, I wonder, and sometimes the problem with AI is just not being able to figure out what it isn't programmed to figure out. I heard a story about a self-driving car that was driving along, and there was a guy on the, just on the grassy part, just on the curb, not in the street, but on the curb. And he was, had a leaf blower, and the thing was blowing leaves, and the self-driving car had no idea what this is. And the self-driving car just stopped because it didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's funny too, because when it comes to the idea of AI functioning in meat space,
yeah,
we have examples of AI driven cars, driverless vehicles, and they're having accidents. They're killing people. They don't know this has happened. No doubt about it. And the more they test them out, particularly around Silicon Valley and Central and Northern California, you're going to see these accidents as they work out the kinks and so on. I'm of mixed mind on this. On the one hand, if you were to extrapolate this out to society and in a probabilistic sense. So let's say I throw a stone into a sea of cars driven by people, and then throw another stone into a sea of cars that are driven by AI, and find out which one is more likely to have an error. I think currently already the answer is you're more likely to find a human that creates an error, not an AI. But I am not dead sure about that. I don't, because, those numbers are, you'd have to have a significant fleet of these self-driving automobiles, self-driving vehicles, to be able to make that determination compared to the masses of automobiles around the country. Because a lot of it's going to be context dependent. A lot of it's going to be, there are certain factors. But on a whole, I would venture to guess that you're more likely to have a human kill another human than you would the AI kill another human, despite its flaws. And you're not very likely to work out the human kinks, but you are very likely to work out the AI kinks as things move forward into the future.
That might be, but I also look at something like airline pilots, and if I'm flying on an airline, I know that pilot has an incentive to land the plane safely because his life is at stake as well. Whereas this remote pilot doesn't really, well, he's probably going to lose his job, but he doesn't really have as much to lose if the plane crashes.
Sure, and autopilot has been going on for a long time, even with these massive commercial carriers with hundreds of people on a plane. I guess the question is, when is it appropriate to override? Are there override capabilities? In the case of an autonomous vehicle, though, there is no overriding because there's a passenger and then the AI. So I'm not sure. I guess, right now we're seeing hybrid models. People who drive Teslas will tell you, and other cars will tell you that there are mechanisms, algorithms for overcorrecting for human error on some of these. So they're doing these hybrid AI/human models right now that are currently rolling out. I'm not sure what I think about it. My instinct, my sort of biases are, I like to be in control. I don't trust something I can't understand to get me there safely. And yet, statistically speaking, I think, and that coupled with the improvements over time with AI, you probably would want to trust the AI more, just statistically speaking.
Yeah, there can certainly be considerations there. I've never liked this this dogma for some people that newer is always better. And some people think, and some people have that attitude that if it's something's from 2015 versus something from 1985, something from 2015 has to be better just because it's from 2015.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think there are lots of good examples of that. We just bought a couple of couches, for example, that from a very, what had been a very sort of credible brand, and they turned out to be junk. We paid $2,500 a couch for 2 couches. It was a lot of money for us. Turned out to be garbage, and we're really disappointed in it. But and we would have paid just $1,000 more to ensure that the couches were going to be durable for a good amount of time. These don't seem to be, and yet that brand, circa 20 years ago, you could have been able to count on it. So, not to say that buying 20-year-old couches would have been the better alternative, because usually that's pretty smelly. But you get my meaning. It's like it's not always, newer's not always better. That's absolutely true. Yeah. And bells and whistles aren't always better.
Oh yeah, bells and whistles. Yeah, I have that thing on.
What properties do you value in the new thing versus the old thing?
Like I have all these monitoring systems on my car that I did just fine without forever. It's a it.
Yeah, a lot of these new systems in cars right now are these energy compliance CAFE standards things that are just getting more and more complex to save a pittance on gas.
Yeah.
I guess their argument is, well, it aggregates over time. So does the cost of the vehicle.
I think part of what's at least made me reluctant to embrace AI is that I already see AI being used for some very nefarious purposes, and in my opinion, the biggest one is censorship on social media. That's being done almost totally by AI.
Unfortunate. Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be nice. There's another example of why you don't want centralized corporations. Your centralized corporation might be on your team, or your centralized corporation might not be. In all likelihood, knowing you and you knowing me, most of the big tech companies aren't on our team. And I am here to tell you, I have been censored by Google on more than one occasion for articles I've written, where my article, search the title, it'll come up #1 on DuckDuckGo, on pre-search. You search it on Google, and it'll be buried on 5 pages down.
Yeah,
and it had to do with the pandemic.
Yep. And I've had at least one video censored on YouTube, which is owned by Google, and I'm starting to wonder if YouTube is sort of shadow banning me. It's hard to say because it seems like I already have ads on Rumble. I don't have ads on Google, which I find very interesting. So there's a whole lot of things going on there. But yes, I'm definitely wondering if they're playing games with me. And
yet YouTube has more people and a better algorithm.
Yeah.
I mean, I love Rumble. I think it's good looking video. And I like that it's run by people who believe in free speech, and yet I can't get on my Rumble app and have things I want served up to me in the same manner that YouTube does. So it's like it's time to catch up. Somebody's going to have to present options as good or better than YouTube in order to really kill them and start getting people to migrate.
Well, the one thing Rumble also did was they discontinued automatic synchronization. YouTube, Odyssey, and BitChute will pull automatically from YouTube. So I upload to YouTube, and my stuff is on Odyssey and BitChute within 12 hours usually. So it goes and pulls that stuff over, which is really good. Odyssey is really, I think, the best alternative out there. There's another thing I can do on Odyssey is I can actually change the video after it's uploaded. On all the other sites, I have to completely delete the video and re-upload.
Huh, but that's really cool. I didn't know Odyssey did that.
Yeah, I can. That's the only place where I can do that. Now I can make minor changes. For example, if I upload a video, when I upload this video, and if I misspell your name in the description field, I can go change the description field, but I cannot change the video.
Yeah.
And if
Last I heard, Odyssey was based on a token model, where the more uploads and everything, that their whole business model was based on a token, and they went to multiple court cases and that didn't work out. They got shot down. So I'm wondering if they're transitioning to a different business model or what's going on.
Yep. Well, Jeremy Kauffman is a free speech absolutist. We've got Teals behind Rumble, and Amy Peikoff works at BitChute, so that's a good sign too. So Amy Peikoff was Leonard Peikoff's second wife, so I believe second wife. So you've got. So hopefully one of those will take over, but and Odyssey is also the only one. BitChute will not backward synchronize, but Odyssey will backward synchronize. So if you've been on YouTube for 3 years and then you decide you want to join Odyssey, eventually Odyssey will pull everything off of your YouTube, even the stuff that has been there for 3 years. That's another thing. The backward synchronization is awesome.
Oh, you mean it just pulls your content as a creator?
Yeah, and it will still have the original dates on it. So like this was uploaded 3 years ago. Yeah.
Well, that's fabulous. I'm just thinking in terms of the user experience. On the creator side, that sounds really great. But on the user side,
this is one thing. None of the apps work quite as good. YouTube's got some really good analytics on it as well. You don't have those good analytical tools that you get on the other sites, unfortunately. They definitely need to do some things, but I also assume they have less money to do what they're doing.
I would love to figure out what could be a YouTube killer.
I think Odyssey could be, but it's hard to say,
Yeah.
Anything that's going to kill the bad social media actors is going to have to allow for an easy transfer. I mean, I would get off Facebook probably pretty quickly if there was an easy way to transfer all of my messages on Facebook to something else and still have all of them there.
Yeah, I'm kind of over Facebook. I certainly don't want to spend any money on it anymore.
Yeah, I doubt also, that's the other thing too, we're talking about AI with censorship. I mean, I think there's also some AI that's pushing stuff out to us, though, where it's deciding, oh, you like this. I mean, it's kind of scary what happens too. I mean, it's
Yeah. AI is going to try to shape your brain.
Yeah.
But I will tell you this. I'll tell you another thing. I am currently getting more and more into the collective intelligence space. This is a very nascent domain that includes stuff like swarm intelligence. But collective intelligence, if you want to contrast it with with AI, CI, collective intelligence is the way to do it. And what CI does, and it can interact with AI for useful things if you want it to. But what collective intelligence does is provide matches based on information and value with other people out there who share patterns of activity like you. So basically, if you imagine harnessing all of the information or collective intelligence out there currently that people contribute in conversation. So it's like an ongoing, not dialogue. I guess it's considered dialogue because you can only interact with one instance of it at a time, but a multilateral dialogue. And that's pretty cool. That's not exactly AI, but AI can reinforce it. But there, I think we can start to, in some sense, catch up with AI, where AI just says, okay, these are all past instances of people talking out there. We're going to just amalgamate it. We're going to have through I guess Bayesian, some sort of background Bayesian computation. With collective intelligence, it's going to be more markets and ideas, is the way I would put it. So that's hugely promising. And then when they start to interact, AI and CI interact, that's going to be really interesting too, because they're going to converge quickly.
Yeah. Do you think we'll get to a point where Wikipedia is all written by AI? I mean, I don't know what I'd think about that.
Oh, I don't know. I don't use Wikipedia much anymore because I don't trust it as far as I can throw it.
That's kind of unfortunate, but I can see where you're coming from. It's still, even non-political, there's a lot of stuff that I can tell that it gets wrong. I mean, sometimes I'll just go there and I'll see something, about sports that's wrong. But it's it's only as good as the people who get on it.
Well, that's any system. That's any human system. The fact is, the political ticks, the political parasites, are either motivated or being paid to alter the information landscape in Wikipedia, because it always comes up so high in search.
Yeah, and that's that's something else too. Has anybody tried to use AI to apply it to matchmaking?
In what way?
Well, like,
give me an example.
Artificial intelligence applied to eHarmony or something like that.
Oh, well, I think that's coming. I think that's probably coming. Yeah.
I think also with the complete failure of, they've always been a complete disaster, dating sites and stuff. I don't know I think people are going to figure out something, I also wonder how people might be using it to, making personnel decisions, or at least searching for personnel. I want somebody to come work for me. We've already heard about things like the keywords, but you have to have the right keywords in your resume.
Yeah. Well, and I think collective intelligence is gonna really help with that.
Yeah. Where else do you think collective intelligence might go?
Breaking down, my hope, vain and distant as it is that it begins to help to start breaking down formal hierarchical structures that where the information flows disrupt the silos, disrupt the formalization in such a way that people they see the benefit of interacting in a truly networked way, because the information is unsiloed or changed through the collective intelligence model. So people, how should we put it? People all over the world who would otherwise be trapped by language barriers, cultural barriers, and so on, can start to break down some of those things that are keeping them in information silos. That's the distant dream on that, but we'll see.
Yeah, I've heard some professional translators say that AI doesn't work that well for translations, but they just usually people run through stuff through a professional AI translator, but then they end up hiring a translator anyway just to go through and correct all the mistakes. I don't know how well that works. When I've had some, I know there's people using AI also to, do translations of Milei's speeches as he's speaking. It's, I don't know, it seems less authentic, but yeah, so there's a
sure, and there going to be all manner of things like that. I mean, just it's no different from I go back, and my little girl the other day was watching Beauty and the Beast, the Disney flick.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in this ballroom where Beauty and the Beast are dancing or twirling or something. I can't remember exactly, but I remember noticing the background was a very rudimentary CGI, a sort of generated background for the animation. And I thought, wow, this is really awful, and nobody would accept this. They got really good at doing spaces because spaces are still, whereas there was much more of an uncanny valley on people and creatures. With this, I don't remember what year it must have been, but it must have been the 90s, like at some point in the 90s. This really, really rudimentary CGI was probably for its time on the cutting edge, but it looked to me like, oh gosh, they've come so far. And it's, translation and subtlety and all that stuff is it's just going to get more and more sophisticated and more granular and subtle as we move forward in time. It may never traverse the uncanny valley. You may still find aspects of translation that are just inherently different between the languages, but I think it's going to get closer and closer as an asymptote would.
Yeah, without ever being perfect. It's interesting too. When George Lucas just would take the original Star Wars and then he went back and said, well, wait, I can make all these improvements with new technology now that I didn't have in 1977. So he goes out and improves on the original Star Wars. I mean, if you think about just how cheesy special effects was back then, and cheesier even before that, it was kind of amazing they were able to do what they did with what they had. I mean,
yeah, it's everything progresses in this way, and that's why whenever I think about AI, open source AI, I mean Claude AI, which I use, and it doesn't have an image generator, at least that I know of. Claude,
is that CLOD or CLAUD or
CLAUDE? Claude, it's Anthropic is the company.
Yeah.
Their results are as good for my money, and I'm not paying for Claude. Textually, Claude is as good as ChatGPT 4.0.
Yeah.
4.0.
I think one thing that makes us all maybe a little bit suspicious, if this stuff is free, why is it free and what are they doing with it? Because if it's because people now realize that if they get something for free, that the person who's giving it to them is probably using them in some way. That maybe are a little skeptical of something just because it is free.
Yeah, all those
is it really free?
They're creating a psychograph about me right now with all those prompts I'm giving ChatGPT. And there are going to be some open source alternatives where there's data sovereignty baked into it.
Yeah.
That's going to be important because people are going to demand more and more data sovereignty. Happily, they're not serving up ads in any of these AI right now. And what they're doing, and with Claude, you can sign up for Claude and you can get all these advanced features for $20 a month, which is the same price as ChatGPT, the latest of ChatGPT. I'm just finding the free version to be on a par for what I need to ChatGPT. And I'm happy with the free product. I can only imagine that the $20 a month one's better. And now that my work is paying for ChatGPT, I don't have to pay for that either. So right now we're already to the point where using the free ones are of tremendous benefit. But there is a model where that you can pay for the newer, faster, sexier version if you want to pay X a month. But they're probably selling our data too.
If they're doing that to the people who are paying for free, I wonder what they're doing to the people who are paying, who aren't paying. Are they still doing the same thing to people who are paying? It does, what kind of information are they going to collect and what are they going to do with it? I mean, I think there's fear, that AI will try to be used. Well, we think this guy might commit a crime, or we think this guy might be, doing all these things, or,
right.
Kind of look for crime when it's not really there. And
pre-crime.
Yeah.
Well, it is an interesting world, and if it's helping benefit you, it's also helping benefit your enemies. If it's helping you be smarter, it's helping people smarter than you who don't have your best interest at heart improve their work too. And that work could be trying to figure out how to exploit you more, whether that's censor you or whatever. And so my hope is that in a sufficiently competitive landscape with AI, we're going to see something like a Red Queen effect. Do you know about a Red Queen effect?
A Red Queen, I'm not really sure what that means. That'd be the Queen of Hearts or the Queen of Diamonds, but
it's the Red Queen in Through the Looking Glass, Alice in Wonderland.
Okay.
She says something to the effect of, it's all you can. I run as fast as I can, but it's all I can do to stay in the same place. And so what that means in terms of evolutionary theory, Matt Ridley wrote a book called The Red Queen, whereas in evolutionary theory, as creatures evolve, they're changing at such a rate where they're all staying in the same place. Creates a stable equilibria, but they have to keep changing. They have to keep adapting in order to persist in time as a genome. And so I think that's more or less the idea. It's been a long time since I read the Ridley book, but if you think about that in information space, it's absolutely true. The better, more productive we get with AI, we have to remember that someone is out there who is a competitor, someone else in the economy who's working better, faster, cheaper too with the AI tools. So that ratcheting up is probably going to have individual benefit and a net benefit to society, with the hopes that these tools don't get in the hands of the most evil people who are trying to keep us on some massive globalist plantation. But otherwise, if we have a whole lot of competitors who are providing a whole lot of properties like data sovereignty, like just as good of results, better imagery, no censorship. And some of them can be corporate, some of them can be open source, but eventually people are going to choose the things that they trust, and that benefit them. And as long as there's a competitive landscape for these AI models, I think we're probably going to be okay. I do have concerns that well-funded organizations like Google and the Chat GPT company, name of it goes out of my mind. Oh, OpenAI. If OpenAI and Google and well-funded operations like that get ahead of the game first and give their power to the evil first to use for a year or two, that could be awful. But still, I think there is a level at which both the open source and, let's call them, corporate good guys can catch up quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, I do wonder if that, there's always this race between the bad guys and the good guys. I mean, but also, do you use an AI to clean up any recordings or clean up any videos you might be making or anything like that? I mean, that's another thing. It seems like AI could maybe improve on some of the things that we can create, maybe not necessarily create, but just, come up with better editing or better.
It does that already. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think there's anything else where we have any other parts of artificial intelligence that we haven't really touched in this conversation?
I think there are many. We haven't even touched on the alignment problem. If you want to wait and do that another day, because we've already gone an hour, that's fine.
Yeah.
But I would leave your listeners with the following thought. What if you imagine artificial intelligence improving at an exponential rate and not stopping? At some point, it is going to be able to exceed human intelligence. It is also going to start being able functionally to interact with other systems, say to turn them on or off. And it can do so in such a way that is adaptable in lightning speed, much faster than a human. So that's a problem. That fact is a problem. If it's smarter than you, and if it develops its own interests, let's say, self-perpetuating, or the means of protecting itself from having it itself be altered or turned off, or if it's self-replicating in some way. So like we can have an instance here and then have another instance here where it clones itself so as to protect itself and you don't know the other instance is there. I mean, there's just all kinds of things. Once something like this gets smarter than you and it starts to take on a sense of agency along the lines of whether or not it's sentient and self-aware, it could still be algorithmically capable of propagating itself and protecting itself like a virus does. If that happens, we might have a kind of a runaway scenario that's very dangerous. And this is some of the things that they are, some of the AI skeptics are worried about. That being said, we might also have a state of affairs where AI, in a competitive AI situation, you have AI wars where the good guy AI and the bad guy AI are constantly at war. That's kind of a screwy imagined scenario. Also, what does it look like to solve the alignment problem? How do you program something whose iteration cycles mean that it evolves to continue to serve or be synergistic or in mutualism, symbiosis with humans, and not come to see themselves as predators and humans as prey? That AI alignment problem, the idea of an artificially intelligent entity being good, even as it becomes more agentic or more teleological, in other words, concerned with its own ends and able to develop its own goals and objectives. That is a problem that needs to be solved. And finally, I would repeat that that improving human collective intelligence relative to artificial intelligence is also going to be interesting, and we're at the very cusp of that.
I hope so.
I hope so too.
This just made me realize, the original Star Trek explored these themes a lot, where the situations where often, the men would build the robots or build the computers as servants, and eventually the roles ended up getting reversed. There are 4 episodes of the original Star Trek that end Yeah, 4 episodes that basically end with Kirk talking a computer to death. He convinces the computer to self-destruct, and the computer does. And that's the end of the computer ruling over these people. It's so, because they don't understand some of the contradictions that we seem to be able to process. But that is something, that's often, and it's probably explored elsewhere in a lot of science fiction.
Sure, and we can also imagine a scenario where the AI, it doesn't have that limitation. So it is able adaptively to protect itself and perpetuate its existence at our expense.
Yeah, it could be. It'll be very interesting to see how that works. But yeah. Well, this has been an interesting conversation, Max. I think we did cover just about everything here on AI. I appreciate you coming on. You've always got a lot of insights. And you've got several books out there. Where can we find you on the net?
I've sold my soul to Jeff Bezos, so a lot of my books are available on Amazon. My most recent book is called Underthrow.
Yes.
Why Jefferson's Dangerous Idea will spark a new revolution. But on the topic of AI, even though it was published in 2018, and this is my most successful book, it's called The Social Singularity. And I've changed my opinions about AI probably slightly from there, but not too much. There's still a lot of insights in that book. So I would encourage folks to pick that up. But otherwise, find me at underthrow.org every day. I try to publish 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah, there's also After Collapse, and you've had a very interesting career, Max. So you've always been a forward-looking man, and so and of course you helped organize that great conference in Austin here called Voice and Exit, and then later Future Frontiers. But that went died because of the coronavirus, unfortunately.
Yes, indeed. I appreciate it though, Chris. I really do, and appreciate everybody listening today.
That was, you and Paleo FX. I mean, that was a real tragedy, and both of them got wiped out by that.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay, Max. Well, I'm Chris Baker. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, check out my Substack. Go get my novel, Escape from the Village. We're out. Thank you, Max. Have a good day.